morning, everyone. It's great to see you all. It's great to see so many of you here at 9 o'clock on a Friday morning. That is terrific. Well done. Good to have you. And welcome to this panel on, as Tladi says, diversity, equity and inclusion in insurance, which I think is a particularly fitting topic for us to start the second day of our annual conference on the theme of the license to operate, the role of insurance in supporting societal resilience, because indeed that's how we think about DEI at the IAIS, is that role it plays in supporting the outcomes we seek. So let me first of all take a moment to introduce our panel of really distinguished speakers. First of all, directly to my left, we have Bongiwe Mncube, who's Group Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Lead at Swiss Re. Beside Bongiwe, we have Butši Tladi, President of the World Federation of Insurance Intermediaries. Welcome, Butši. And beside Butši, we have Viviene Pearson, Chief Executive of the South African Insurance Association. And then online, and delighted to have her with us, we have Fatou Giwa, Global Lead of the Women's Insurance Program at the International Finance Corporation. So welcome to you all. It is great to be here with you. To start the ball rolling, to start our discussion this morning, maybe if I could pass to Viviene, maybe just to give us a few opening remarks, orienting our discussion against the backdrop of South Africa. Viviene.
Thank you, Gerry. Good morning, everybody, and again, a very warm welcome to South Africa. I was complaining to Gerry just earlier, saying, how can you summarize a 30-year journey in 5 minutes? So I'm going to try my very best. I think I can safely say that most people in this room would not dispute that diversity, equity and inclusion is an absolute necessity. It makes sense all round. And it certainly makes business sense as well. So I'm not going to say anything further on that part. The question really is who should do it, what should be done, and how should one drive it? And this is where the South African experience comes in. So to me, I think, firstly, it must be a deliberate decision. It must be a deliberate process. It also must be a process, if one can do it organically, and it will take time. It doesn't come without challenges, and it doesn't come without a lot of criticism and a lot of pressure, and certainly on the broader financial sector, which is seen as a catalyst for change in society, and in particular the insurance industry. So there's a lot of pressure here, and it is not an easy journey. And maybe just also to emphasize that I think it is a journey. So on the question of who should do it, certainly the insurance industry should do it. But I believe that the insurance industry cannot be the only catalyst. So similar to the advancement of the social development goals that we talked about yesterday, I think it should be seen as a whole of society role. You know, it is a broad initiative that should resonate throughout the whole of society. So each of us has a different role to play. So just a little bit more specifically about the South African example, and I do want to just emphasize that I do believe that it will be different in different jurisdictions. There are different circumstances, there are different things to advance in terms of reaching a diverse, inclusive and equitable the goal. So we had a deliberate government intervention in 2003. The Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment Act was passed, and that was the start of our deliberate journey. Obviously, we had a history where, which was based on race, and this is the emphasis on the race element in South Africa. So the Act was passed across all economic sectors, and now the financial sector broadly and the insurance industry as part of that had to deliberate how are we going to implement it. It is a framework, and it is up to us on how to implement it. There was, alongside the Act, a generic, broad-based black economic empowerment code, which everybody can adhere to. It's a scorecard, it's got different elements, and there are some consequences and incentives along the way. Now, different sectors can add different things to this journey. The financial sector certainly, as I said, is seen as a catalyst for economic inclusion and growth and sustainability, and the insurance sector has its role to play there. So it was agreed within the financial sector, and the insurance industry played a big role in that, in terms of having a sector-specific code, so that we can add those elements that the industry, the insurance industry, and the broader financial sector can contribute to better outcomes. So those specific areas would include, from a non-life insurance point of view, certainly we procure from all sorts of businesses, from panel beaters to builders, plumbers, and so on. So that, we believed, was an element which we can really target as an industry to drive the inclusion of small businesses and black-owned businesses, and also advance competition and accessibility to business opportunities. There are other sectors like the life insurance and investment sector that can add to empowerment financing and those kind of things. All of us together can add to financial inclusion and accessibility of financial products. And together with that, a big element and a big focus is on consumer education within the financial sector environment. So I think that there are lots of elements there, and that would include I've mentioned a few very specific to the financial sector and the insurance sector, which I think is very relevant, but there are broader elements included there: ownership, shareholding, the board composition, and then management control. Who are in the decision-making positions? Are you diversifying there? Are you including people there? And then with that, very importantly, skills development. So, because we know that in the insurance industry, we need technical skills, we need specific skills, we need, quite a set of skills. And so therefore, and that I think is part of the journey. So yes, I think I'm almost done. Maybe overdue. So maybe just to add that this journey is not without pitfalls, not without challenges, and it comes at a cost financially, but it is absolutely worthwhile. And I would encourage everybody to see it in that sense. Thank you, Gerry.
Thank you, Viviene, very much, and thank you for that. You were saying to me beforehand, and you said sort of that your goal to summarize a very long and challenging journey in 5 minutes. I think you did that very well. And I think you've picked up a number of themes there, or brought out a number of themes in the South African context, which is particularly rich, of course, which are picked up both in the panel discussion now and also in the work that the IAIS has been doing in this space. And one thing that really caught my attention as you were speaking was you used that phrase, the need for diversity, equity and inclusion to resonate through society and to resonate through what we're doing. And I think if I think about the work that the IAIS has been doing over the recent period, I think there's something of that aspect in what we've been doing. So I spoke yesterday at the Exco Town Hall about the two products in this space that the IAIS is completing right now. The first being an application paper in relation to the role that diversity plays in the running of insurance firms, and the second about what the diversity lens can bring to the outcomes that insurance delivers for society. And when I think about, if you like, the threads running through that work that the IAIS has been doing, I think it's basically this, the idea that strength and enhanced outcomes are really supported by a diversity lens and a diversity approach. And that's where I think, if I look at those papers, the one application paper which is now completed, the other which is in completion in the coming months, that idea of the strength and enhanced outcomes that diversity can bring is the golden thread for me. That's how it coheres. So when I think about the first paper where we're looking at, if you take a diversity lens as a supervisor to how a firm is run, and you look at the governance, you look at the risk management, and you look at the culture using that lens, it can really help you as a supervisor, and it can help a firm to be more sustainably profitable and to be a better functioning firm over the longer term. And then the second paper, which is about outcomes for customers, outcomes for consumers. Again, the application paper takes as its starting point the idea that we have well embedded in our regulatory frameworks across the globe the idea of customer outcomes, fair treatment of consumers, customers getting a fair deal. And again, if you bring the diversity lens to that, it brings you a richness and it brings you an enhancement in terms of how you deliver those outcomes. And going through that draft application paper, which many of you have, you will see that sort of the details around how that lens can help you think about some of the challenges, Viviene, that you were talking about, I think, is really there. So to my mind, if I think about the journey the IAIS has been on in this space, an awful lot of these themes come together in the current moment, which is very, very welcoming, I think. But let me turn now maybe to Bongiwe, if I may start with you. And maybe with a straightforward, but nonetheless very a lot to it type question. From the point of view of Swiss Re, when you think about these issues and the role you have in Swiss Re, what does Swiss Re consider as the business case, the business imperative for actually making DEI a priority? And what sort of actions do you take to implement that?
Sure, thank you, Gerry, and greetings to you all. For us, DEI is a strategic enabler for our business in the war of talent. I mean, today, employees, they want to be engaged. They want, meaningful work. They are seeking purpose. They are seeking autonomy, fair opportunities, fair pay, work-life balance. And so if we are to attract and retain top talent, then an inclusive first environment is key, where we aim to create a sense of belonging for all our people so that they can meaningfully contribute. And we do this through inclusive practices and an inclusive culture. On inclusive practices, we focused on increasing the diverse profile of our employee base by having clear and transparent ambitions. We've also focused on inclusion-proofing our people practices across the employee lifecycle. We've introduced practices such as diverse candidate slates when hiring, diverse panels, pay transparency. We've also extended to family-friendly policies, equalizing parental leave, and recently we launched a program, Career Returnees at Swiss Re, which is aimed at supporting those who have taken an extended career break and are looking to reintegrate back to work. And on inclusive culture, we recognize that leaders play a critical role to culture. And so we introduced a 2-year learning experience for all our senior leaders with the aim to deepen their understanding of diverse communities, diverse needs, so that they're able to lead inclusively. And so for us, all of this contributes to business performance, and that is why DEI is a strategic enabler for us.
Thank you, Bongiwe, very much for that. I mean, maybe if I could turn to Fatou next. So in the work, Fatou, that the IAIS has been doing, while we don't try to define diverse consumer in too much detail, we do try and describe it, and that idea of people who are not part of the dominant consumer profile that insurers and intermediaries most often anticipate and cater to. Perhaps, Fatou, you can tell us a little bit about women and the challenges they experience as customers, or indeed prospective customers of insurance. And is it possible to pinpoint a couple of key actions that should be taken to achieve better outcomes for women in insurance?
Thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity to speak here today, and particularly focusing on the importance of understanding women as a diverse customer profile in the insurance industry. Women face distinct risk, so different risk compared to men, and value a different component of insurance solution, and often engage and build trust in unique ways. So there's differences are deeply rooted in the context of their lives and also behaviors. At IFC, in the research we have been conducting, we've really identified critical tipping point in the life of women where there are risks that can increase, making insurance even coverage more essential. So when we look into employment, marriage, property acquisition, pregnancy, raising children, caring for the elderly, the family, divorce, and retirement. Women are particularly vulnerable during events such as job loss, caregiving responsibility, business shutdown, divorce, and it can really significantly impact their financial stability. So when we spoke to women about insurance, several barriers stood out, during the research we did. And often they cited the policies that were difficult to understand. They just don't understand the policies, too complicated for them. The claim processes also are complicated. It's a challenge. And of course, the poor customer service. And those are reasons for not purchasing insurance. They don't understand it. When they buy it, they are not happy with the way they are treated and the way, if a claim come up, it is handled. So many also feel that they are underestimated by insurers because they don't believe they have that purchasing powers that men have to make financial decision, to take their own decision. Also, they face discrimination in certain insurance products, and particularly we see that in health and in life. For example, we see that there are higher premium than men for some same coverage, and especially when it's about health insurance, and there are these unreliable assumptions that they have higher healthcare costs. And when you compound this to many health insurance policies that exclude coverage for maternity or pregnancy-related complication while offering protection for male-specific disease. So those challenges really highlight the gender gap in accessing, in using, and in demanding insurance product. So insurers often sell gender-neutral product that fail to address the needs, the aspiration, and the wants of women. So their products are frequently designed with male in mind, making them less accessible and relevant to women. So we see that the women's ability to access insurance is further constrained by limited ownership of assets, which affect their eligibility for credit, for related insurance product. And of course, this is combined with societal mistrust, with lack of collateral, and also with low financial literacy, particularly when we talk about rural areas. So many women also lack trust in financial service providers and require consistent support from agent to understand and adopt insurance products. So it is really crucial for women to be seen not as an homogeneous group. They represent a diverse market with distinct needs that shape by factors like income, employment, marital status, health, life stages, and so on. So it's really to remember that one size fit all solution simply will not work, and insurance product must be tailored to reflect this difference. So to unlock the market potential of women as insurance customer, the key action for a fairer treatment of women in insurance, it will be important for insurance companies and also the stakeholder, the whole insurance, to look more into stopping the one-size-fits-all, designing a gender-informed product, and which mean understanding the women's need, looking at the portfolio, disaggregating the portfolio to be able to enable the development of targeted value proposition. It will be important to leverage partnership and reach women where they are, either in their different groups, use technology, look at more women in the women's sales force, because we've also seen through our research that in some culture they are more interested, we are more open when they deal with agents that are female like them. It will be also important to look into financial and digital literacy for them to be able to understand insurance and what it can bring to them. Advocate, of course, for supportive government policies, and last but not least, focus on women entrepreneurs. So design solutions that protect both their personal but also professional lives, such as coverage of their workspace, employees, and tailored health plan. So just to conclude, we have a 1.7 trillion opportunity out there in the women's market, and we know that 75% of discretionary spending worldwide is in the hand of women. So addressing the gender protection gap is both a business opportunity and a DEI imperative, and it is important that insurance, the insurance sector secure significant market growth by advancing fairness and inclusivity in the sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Fatou, very much. And I think, so I think about some of the themes you cover there and where you finish this idea that, first of all, sort of the economic potential that is there, combined, and you use the word in your remarks, with that need for there to be trust and confidence amongst customers, the female customers in the insurance sector, for us to realize that potential. And then some of the things you touched on, the idea of meeting the customer where they are in terms of understanding and conveying and understanding, the idea of how people feel they are treated and engaged with, whether they feel empowered or not, and some of the assumptions that are made. I think what struck me as you were saying all that is that these are all the themes that, as we in the IAIS also were developing that paper on sort of market outcomes, it's how you, as a firm, as an insurance firm, how you harness your thinking around some of those themes to allow you to deliver that trust and confidence, and to allow you to realize the potential for all of your market customers. I think there's real power in those connections. Butši, I mean, speaking of retail customers, and it is the focus of that second paper that I referred to of the IAIS. And in many contexts, intermediaries play a really important role in the distribution of insurance to retail customers. And of course, that is something that is very much in your bailiwick. What do you consider are the key opportunities maybe to improve for a diverse range of retail customers the experience of choosing, buying, and then using insurance?
Thank you so much, Gerry, and good morning once more. You know, when we started thinking about this conference and engaging with the material that the IAIS had issued, we reached out as the World Federation of Insurance Intermediaries to all of our members in the over 80 countries that we organized in. And we asked for input on this issue. Gerry, it's amazing how aligned we all appear to be in terms of what needs to be done. But surprisingly, for something that there is such agreement globally, we are seeing not as much progress as we would want, as needs to happen to ensure that those consumer outcomes are improved. So I guess, Gerry, if there's anything we get from this conference, by the way, you chose the most opportune country to have this conversation on, because if there's anything that South Africans do well, is engage on this debate of diversity, inclusion. In a country where there are 11 official languages, there are 11 different ways. In fact, sign language has just become the 12th, I think. So there's different ways in which we need to communicate and get a message across to our diverse consumers. And therein lies perhaps part of what we need to solve for as we have these discussions. They need to be robust. They need to be genuine. We need to be asking ourselves, are we making the progress? As you look around the very team that designs and distributes these products that we're taking out, are they diverse enough? Do they have a full appreciation about what the implications will be in doing so? So we can say whatever we want, but ultimately for me it starts with the values and the ethics that we have in our organizations, and it is across the board. It is not just insurance, it's not just intermediaries. I even want to challenge supervisors in that. We can never regulate sufficiently for that, for the values that do we truly embrace what diversity and inclusion is about? And until we genuinely embark on this journey, in one of your papers, you call it whitewash, or I can't recall the exact term, but we will play at it and not really genuinely move the dial in the direction that it needs to go. And so, as intermediaries, obviously we tend to be the closest to our end consumers, to the retail. And I think we also need to accept that being a retail customer, in that comes some inherent vulnerabilities that perhaps people that are in the institutional space do not have. You are making a decision or need to make a decision about something that you do not always have the full depth and support and technical info that the institutions have. So there is always that element of vulnerability. Even the most educated of our consumers will not keep up with the changing product designs, the changing technology, all of those things. It is increasingly becoming difficult. And therefore, at the heart of all that we do is that relationship of trust. Our customers trust their intermediaries and need to trust their intermediaries, and therein at the center of it is the values and the ethics that have to encompass everything that we do. We can never legislate enough for something like that. If we can, good for us. So obviously, once we get over that, the culture that we're creating, whether we are building an industry where people can trust, it's trustworthy, and all of those good things, we then move on to the simpler issues about the product designs, about our communication, and obviously, leveraging technology has to be at the core of this. It enables so many other things. Of course, there will always be customers that perhaps cannot fully interact with that. Nobody needs to be left behind. We need to carry everybody with us on this journey. But our customers are as diverse as they come, and the manner in which we engage with them has to embrace that and accept that. And then ultimately, when members or when our customers need to use the products and the solutions that we have given to them based on their needs and so forth, they have to work. It is the ultimate test. And obviously tracking that and understanding the complaints that come to that, to the after-sales service, all of that is key to this journey. But I think at the heart of it, if there's anything that we need to get right, it is that relationship of trust, which intermediaries are spending so much time investing in. And as I said, there are some of these trends that we just need to embrace and understand how we carry everybody with on that journey. Let me leave it there for now.
Thanks, Butši, very much indeed. And actually, I think there's a very sort of strong triangle, if I can say, emerging here. So Bongiwe and Fatou talked as part of their comments about that sort of the economic imperative. I think in amongst the many things you said there, one of the things you talked about was sort of giving life to values, right? So what are the values that underpin delivering on this? And then the third thing, and you also mentioned this, Butši, was the issue of what role can regulation play in all of that. So if you take that kind of triangle between sort of the economic imperative, the trust, and then the role of regulation, maybe Viviene, if I can turn to you on that question of supervision and regulation. What role do you possibly see for insurance supervisors in this space? And should we be in a kind of as supervisors, a kind of a soft space, encouragement, or should we be doing more? What's your view from an industry perspective on that, Viviene?
Yeah, I feel I got the most controversial question. And I will try my best to live up to that. I think I already started the way in which I want to answer this question when I said it's a whole of society problem. And there's a role of, well, not problem, imperative. And there are different roles for different role players. I believe there is a role for the insurance supervisors, or in our language, the regulator, or the regulators. And I want to also go back to the point that I made, it must be deliberate. However, there are, that's why we have two regulators. There is the prudential financial stability side of things, and then there is the market conduct and financial inclusion, again, imperative. So, you know, there's definitely a role for the regulators, the supervisors. Should it be an almost punitive role is the question. I think the answer should be no. I think it should be an encouragement role, an advocacy role, and let's do this journey as best we can. Because in terms of regulation, there is a lot of regulation in the insurance industry. The regulations come at a cost. I have already alluded to the fact that a diversity, equity, and inclusion journey comes at a cost. It is time, it is deliberate effort, it comes with a financial cost. Also, if we go, so there are so many layers of regulation that you don't want pushback before you come, you want buy-in. And the supervisor can play a role at all the different levels, the board level, and I've seen this in the paper, the board level, you know, looking at your management control profile. And I do want to also again make the point that we need to see diversity, inclusion, equity and inclusion as beyond, broader than race and gender. Yes, there are some race and gender issues. We need to address it, but not at the cost of broader diversity, broader inclusion. So that point, I think, is also relevant for in this message, you know, in terms of the role of the supervisor. So if we go to the consumer side, and it's more the financial inclusion and then also consumer protection. If you have so many layers of consumer protection, you almost making it more difficult to be inclusive. Because then it becomes costly. The product becomes costly. And now you're almost defeating, you know, the objective. So I think it should be a carefully considered role, and I think it should be a collaboration with the industry, and I think it should be a very consultative journey. I do not think a forced journey is going to have the right results. I do think that there will be too much pushback and people will just give up. There's also a big point around proportionality. You know, in South Africa, we still have a small niche, very important insurance companies in the non-life sector. These companies are smaller. They almost don't do transformation or you know, diversity, inclusion, and whatever because they can't afford it. The large companies can because they have the money. It costs money. So now, where you actually also have a competition drive to ensure that you can serve a diverse community. You are almost driving the smaller companies out of the equation. So I sort of now sagged into all the challenges and so on, which let me stop there. Thank you.
Thanks, Viviene. I mean, there's an awful lot in what you've said, an awful lot of force, I think. I mean, when I think about and you mentioned the IAIS paper on this, it's sort of a little bit aligned with what you said. It sort of breaks the modalities of regulation or supervision into sort of three potential parts, none of which are mutually exclusive. Sort of one is, as you say, that kind of encouragement, promotion, support at one end. At the other end, it's sort of you can also take a more hard-edged route, and I think you wisely say be very careful about where that leads you. I mean, interestingly, for example, in Europe now in the new Solvency II directive, there's sort of soft, hard-edge regulation. In other words, firms required to have a policy, required to set targets, but not saying what those targets might be. So it creates a framework. And then in the middle, and I think this is where there's really a sweet spot emerging in the IIS discussions at least, is around this point that if we have regulatory aims, let's call them soundness, consumer outcomes and inclusion and market development, tying diversity to those, in other words, sort of seeing how diversity can help achieve those, is a way, I think, for supervisors to play a sort of a very active role, but also proportional. Because I think the point you make about small firms is really important. But I think, again, in the papers, one sees that diversity is really a proportionate thing. You know, it's about how you approach the questions as opposed to sort of, you have to do X or Y. And I think there's a lot in that. Bongiwe, if I may turn to you again. So thinking about this question of consumer outcomes, and very concretely, let's say, in the context of Swiss Re, when you're approaching some of these questions, do you try to embed DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion approaches in your customer facing? So you talked about the sort of the internal and the importance of it to talent and culture and all that. Do you also do that when you look outwards from your business, and how do you approach that aspect?
Sure. In our commitment to building societal resilience, we do focus on the aspect of financial inclusion. And part of our approach to closing the protection gap for our underserved populations, we focus on 3 A's, which is availability, accessibility, and affordability of insurance. And we've seen some success in some of the innovative solutions that we've introduced. For example, for people living with HIV/AIDS in markets such as South Africa and the US, where they tended not to be insured, we have leveraged Lifeguard, which is our signature underwriting manual, which allows us to be able to ask the right questions to better understand our customers' disease management, and therefore enhancing the insurer's certainty of risk, which then lowers the cost for the customer, and in that way it improves affordability. Another example I can give is when we look at Latin America, for lower income and rural communities, they have limited access to life and health insurance. And so with our partners, we partnered and we looked at a way to improve accessibility for these communities by finding a new way of selling insurance that is fully integrated and embedded in a large Latin American e-commerce platform. And in this way, we've been able to give accessibility to thousands of first-time buyers. So I guess what I can say is through these strategic partnerships and also these innovative solutions, alternate solutions that we seek to provide, we then cater to the diverse needs of these customers and also assisting our clients.
Thank you, Bongiwe. And has that been a journey that has been sort of relatively straightforward for Swiss Re, or have you had to do a lot of promotion, persuasion, ongoing engagement? How's that journey been for you?
Yes, I guess importantly is the strategic imperative and getting alignment. And we had to align it to our sustainability goals in the way that we want to do business. And in that way, it ensures the right investments from our business in really looking at these alternate solutions and making sure that we've got the right structures to support it. So for us, that's why I said it's towards our commitment to building societal resilience. And so it is a key strategic focus.
Thank you very much indeed, Bongiwe. Colleagues, we're going to run short of time reasonably soon, so for these last few questions, maybe we'll try and keep the answers as concise as I know it's a big topic. Maybe Fatou, one of the things that has come up as we've been thinking and talking about this issue in more depth has been the potential for technology and innovation and maybe other trends, global trends, to be relevant to this advance of diversity, equity and inclusion in our outcomes. What reflections do you have on that, Fatou?
So when you talk about technology and innovation, it really plays a transformative role in driving DEI within the insurance sector. And it's great that, we just heard about the Swiss Re 3A because it drives it by making product and services more accessible, more affordable and relevant to the underserved communities and of course talking about women and marginalized communities. And when we look through it, just to be very concise, when we look at a digital platform that increase access to insurance services, especially for underserved communities, mobile apps, online portal that simplify access to information and claims filling. And when we look at technology that can also educate consumer about insurance, promoting greater inclusion. We can talk also about data analytic and AI that allows insurer to understand better diverse consumer needs and offering personalized, being able to offer personalized services. So one of the first step really is, for example, for insurers to be able to do sex disaggregated data when we look at, the gender side and be able to collect and analyze data to better understand the risk that women face when, we are talking about women. And of course, there's telematic and Internet of Things that we can talk about here when we look at auto insurance premium based on actual driving rather than demographic factors. When we talk about wearable health device, that allows also personal health insurance. And just to finalize on that, we can also talk about blockchain being able to enhance transparency, trust in the insurance process by providing a secure and immutable record of transaction. Now, when we look at the global trend in general, what we see on the favorable side is that there's an increasing regulatory focus on DEI, which is great. So the mandate for diversity reporting and anti-discrimination measure, creating a level playing field there. We also see a growing consumer demand for DEI. So it drives insurers to adopt inclusive practice, build brand loyalty, and also when we think about globalization, so exposure to the diverse customer base through globalization encourage insurance to develop inclusive product and services. Now, on the other side, the risky trend, we see technological bias, economical inequality, and resistance to change. So there's a risk of perpetuating bias if the algorithm are not carefully designed and monitored, which can lead to biased outcome. We also see that economic inequality can exclude lower income individuals from being able to afford insurance. And we see it in all that we do. It's organizational resistance to change, right? So DEI initiative that, especially if at the leadership level are not, there's no buying at that level, it will be difficult to implement. So just to conclude, technology and innovation have the potential to significantly advance DEI in the insurance sector by increasing accessibility, promoting transparency. However, it will be very important to address the risk of technology bias, the risk of economic inequality to ensure effective and sustainable DEI initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Fatou. Look, and I think in a nutshell there you have captured what is one of the biggest challenges, certainly for regulators, and I think also for industry and stakeholders, which is how we now harness the massive opportunities that this technological advancement brings, and then manage the risks and keep those two things very well in balance, so that ultimately the technology works for the outcomes that we're seeking. We're running short of time. I have one more question for Butši and one for Viviene. Butši, what do you see as the biggest challenges for the insurance sector in terms of more diversity in its workforce and in its business practices?
Yeah, maybe good to also focus on maybe some of the solutions, because the challenges are very well known to so many of us. Two of the markets that we have members from shared very interesting experiences where they've got a framework to measure levels of diversity, reward people that achieve certain levels, or penalize those that are not trying as hard as they should. And in doing so, particularly they focused on the workforce. Actually, one of the companies in our membership have gone out and created their own policy about diversity and inclusion. And they've said that within a certain period of time, they will only deal with insurers that achieve certain measures. They, for example, have said they expect 40% of the workforce in that insurance, in any insurance company that they deal with, to be black. So really tackling that issue of race and so forth. But further to that, they've also said 40% of that workforce need to be women. And they've also tackled very clear functions within the industry where diversity is a challenge. Asset management, underwriting, the ones where we claim that there isn't sufficient pools. They've even gone further and said what percentage of those should be people with disabilities. They are measuring it, they are tracking it. We are watching to see what they will do, because we're nearly at the end of the 3 years that they'd set out. But what that has led to, you look back to where it was 3 years ago, one has seen positive movements in that. It has not always been a straight line. You take 3 steps forward, 1 back, so long as there's progress. But you leave each period literally measuring whether there is progress or there isn't progress. But until you begin to measure some of these things, it becomes very difficult. It will continue to be a conversation that we have at conferences such as today without truly bringing about meaningful change. And that perhaps is it's a takeaway. Maybe it's not mainly a challenge, but more as to what some of the things that we can do in that space.
Thank you, Butši. And maybe that's very nice. You used the phrase there, 3 steps forward, 1 step back. And maybe I'll come full circle, come back to Viviene and the South African experience, but in this context of insurance. Are you optimistic? Are we making good progress in terms of harnessing all of the power of diversity for the insurance sector, its performance and its outcomes, and what other things would you finally draw out of the South African experience to share with us?
Yes, I think I just want to latch on to what Butši said. We have definitely made a lot of progress, but they don't match the expectations. So I think there are unreasonable or very high expectations from the financial sector, and certainly from the insurance sector. And some of these expectations are impractical. Some of them can't be implemented in the way that it's expected. So I think there's always going to be push and pull. One must be very clear. You are going to be criticized. And that's why I keep on calling it a journey. This journey, you're going to take a few steps forward and then you're going to fall back, because there's a lot of competition for the individuals in the talent pool at the highest levels. So the more the competition is, and I think that's maybe one of the challenges that we can see, I can see it playing out within the South African Insurance Association's board, because on the board sits the CEOs of our member companies. And you can see that at one stage we had more than many, black CEOs. Then we had a stage where it's sort of like, some of the companies are trying for 5 years to find a CEO of the right profile, because they are, in demand. And then you can see a lot of women on the board. And then all of a sudden we go back a step again. So there's a clear picture of how it is actually cyclical, and how it's not always possible to achieve what you want to achieve, what you are striving to achieve. And then there must be ways in which you actually, maybe go outside of the industry and find somebody. And this is at all levels. Also, we must just, and I know I must finish now, on the broader than just the talent pool empowerment, the suppliers to the industry. So you have all sorts of requirements that you must be at least 51% black owned. Now, a larger supplier can go and get in, some diverse people and become 51% compliant. Is that real transformation is also the question, because was the intention the right intention? And I want to come back to Butši's point about the values. It must be value driven. And I'll stop there. There are lots of other challenges, but I think that's an example. Thank you.
Thank you, Viviene, very much. Yes, we have our red lights flashing, so we do need to stop. Though we could go on quite a long time. It's been a really rich conversation. Let me express my thanks and your thanks here today to Fatou, to Bongiwe, to Butši, and to Viviene for what I think has been a really, really enlightening discussion. Thank you all very much indeed. Thanks.